Hello, my name's Susan Morley, and I'm a member of the Billericay Mayflower Twinning Association. This is the 400th anniversary of the sailing of the Mayflower to the New World, and we thought it was important that we should mention this for the history fair. So in 1620, people from Billericay set off to go to America, and they left Billericay in July. And they'd had a pretty rubbish year, and it was about to get worse. Very like us, 1620, 400 years ago, and 2020 were not the greatest of times. But they chose to leave this country in hope of doing better. And they went to the Mayflower in July, but they didn't actually leave until August when they left England. So it's a long journey back in the 1600s. And they had a journey that was really about the worst it could be. They left late because there were supposed to be two ships, the Mayflower and the Speedwell, but the Speedwell leaked to the point where it was not seaworthy, couldn't be fixed, and therefore couldn't go. So the Mayflower took extra people in order to accommodate the lack of the Speedwell. And it brought delays. So they didn't actually set off to America until the autumn. And of course, they'd meant to leave much, much earlier when there was decent weather and a better journey, they hoped, a better crossing, because it was going to take a long time to cross anyway. The Mayflower is a sail ship and quite small, very small by today's standards. And they put over 100 people on her, which is amazing. If you've ever seen the Mayflower replica, you can't imagine where they all were, let alone where the supplies went to see them through the journey. So they left late, and therefore they got bad weather. And the crossing took them 10 weeks, thereabouts, which is a long time to be cooped up on a tiny ship in rough seas. They also, of course, missed the right winds and were blown off course, which made their journey longer. And unfortunately, in such difficult conditions, quite a few of them became ill, and some indeed died on the journey across. There wasn't much in the way of medicine in 1620. So when they eventually arrived, it was November, the 11th of November. And unfortunately, they didn't arrive where they meant to arrive. They hoped they were going to arrive where there was already an established colony, so there would be help for them before the winter came. Instead of which, they arrived in open wilderness, a swamp, near what is now Plymouth. And they had to land there. They were exhausted. Their rations were running out. They needed to make land, so they did. But many then died very soon after landing from illness. They had to, of course, make their own shelters from any wood they could find, make cabins and things like that to be their shelters, because there was nothing there. They didn't know quite where they were. They didn't know who might also be around. And there were Native Americans around at that time, unknown whether they would be friendly or hostile, of course. They didn't do so well. They did survive, some of them, but unfortunately the four who left Billericay, Christopher Martin and his wife Mary Martin, and Solomon Prower and John Langamore, they didn't survive through the first winter. They died at various times, but they didn't make it, which is unfortunate, but a fact of life in 1620. So there they were, a colony at last. Some had gone as adventurers, some as merchants hoping to exploit the resources of the new country, and some as religious dissidents who didn't like the way they were forced to have their services in England at the time, and they wanted freedom to worship as they chose in their way, the Pilgrim Fathers amongst them. And so they all settled and had to help each other to survive the first winter, because in New England, winters are harsh and there's a lot of snow and it's very deep and very cold. And still is today. But they had very little to help them except what they could find upon the land. And they had to forage for food everything was down to their own hard work and team spirit, really. But they did survive, some of them, and the colonies expanded. More ships came, bringing more people. Some came from Billericay, some more people came. And eventually in 1655, some of the settlers took a portion of land and called it Billerica, which is Billericay without the Y. So they called it Billerica in 1655, and their particular note was Mr. French and a Mr. Hill, both of whom had come from Billericay in various different sailings. And that is how we got our twin in America. Billerica was founded and became a thriving colony and thriving town it is today, which is very similar to Billericay, except for they have a lot more land. They're a lot more spread out in Billerica than we are in Billericay. Not quite the same urban design, but then we're a much smaller island than America. And that is how the Pilgrim Fathers had rather a rough year getting to America 400 years ago this year. Now, we were to have a lot of celebrations during this year, but unfortunately we've not been able to do that. We did, however, manage to put a plaque into the Slip Discs coffee shop, which is right next door to the Chantry, where Christopher Martin and the others planned their voyage. At one time it was one house, we believe. So the plaque is there on the wall, showing the names of the pilgrims on that first voyage on the Mayflower from Billericay. We hope you can all go and visit it, and will enjoy remembering those people who were so brave back in 1620. Thank you.